each. And I think, now the guy needs to step up against Newcastle at home, at Old Trafford. United are going to be looking to turn this round. My prediction is United to beat Newcastle. I think, we lost to Newcastle in the away leg 1-0. A goal from the young ginger lad there. And I think Newcastle are going to feel the wrath. Can't see Newcastle scoring in this game. I do think there'll be a cleanie for Manchester United. A rare thing indeed, as we don't keep them. But it's about time we were due one. And I see one in this game. Along with that, the recommendation from my side is definitely Rashford. Watched him against Colchester in the League Cup, which is why I actually captained him last week. He was very good against Colchester. He was making chances, he was making assists, and he's getting in there and he's getting shots and he hits the target more often than not. Again, he hit the target against Watford. Foster, great save with his right foot at the bottom left. If that had have gone in, would have been a very different story, especially for my game week, but also for everyone who's got Rashford. And I see Rashford scoring this week. I do see it. I keep on it about him scoring. I'm sure it's coming this week. So for me, Manchester United, Rashford is where I'd be looking in game week 19. And the other reason I've selected Manchester United as a team to watch is for game week 20, they're away at Burnley. Now, Burnley have come into a rich vein of form recently. It's not a gimme at the moment. They've sorted it out after a bit of a rocky patch. But I do think that, that is only temporary. So Burnley in game week 20 host Manchester United. And when they've hosted the bigger teams or the perceived, and I'm classifying United as a bigger team here because they're my team, but necessarily not at the moment, sitting in a lowly 8th position. But I think my point really is Burnley, they played Spurs, got beat 5-0. Before Spurs, they played Manchester City, lost 4-1. When they come up against the teams that attack with a little bit more intensity and high volume, I think they struggle. And I think Manchester United will attack them and will try and speed up the game. And I can actually see young James doing well in the Burnley game. I can see Martial as well with his trickery and his skill in the box and his turn and his speed of foot doing quite well. So in these next 2 games, I'm actually seeing a 6-point return for Manchester United. I'm biased, of course, being a fan. Always take that into consideration when I give you these bits of advice. Every time I've backed United, they've not quite done it for me. But this week and these next 2 game weeks, I'm feeling strong for Manchester United. So I think, they'll be my pick for the week. That's where I think the points will be. I think if you are looking at clean sheets from United, that's probably unlikely. But goal-wise, I think we're due a few. I think in both of our last games, the goalkeepers were arguably man of the matches. 8 saves from Foster for the Watford game, 8 saves from Pickford in the Everton game. So, United are making chances. Just not going in the net at the moment. That luck is going to turn, and I think these are the 2 game weeks. So personally, I'd be sticking with them. If I'm completely wrong after this, I will not be backing United again. But let's see how we go. So after that, my other pick for the week, and I think, to many of you, this will come as quite a surprise. But for game week 19, my second team to watch is going to be Brighton. Now, already mentioned that in game week 19, they have a tough trip away to Spurs. But I do think Spurs are not looking like the finished product or the strongest article. I've actually saw calls for Jose Mourinho to be fired after 32 days in the job. So maybe, people have had enough of Jose already. But one thing that is true is it's been difficult for Spurs to maintain the level when he first came in. And when they play bigger teams, I think they struggle. Not necessarily that Brighton are a bigger team, but I think Brighton will put up a solid test. Defensively, Brighton haven't been too bad over the last few game weeks. They did lose 1-0 in the last game. 26 goals against in total this season. And that's not the worst in the league by any stretch of the imagination. But, my point really is they played Crystal Palace and they drew 1-1 there. and they really controlled that game against Crystal Palace. That was game week 17. Now, after game week 17, they had a tough one against Sheffield United. And Sheffield United went to Brighton and they beat them 1-0. And I think the fact that Sheffield United are in the top 5, and I think Sheffield United keep proving again and again why they're in the top 5. But for Brighton to only let one in against Sheffield United, to me, it cements again that they're defensively strong. Let one in against Palace, one in against Sheffield United. They're not getting turned over. So I think they're going to put up a resolute performance against Spurs. They're coming off the back of a defeat themselves and a draw. Spurs, of course, are coming off the back of 2 defeats. So they obviously lost a defeat at Chelsea. Before that, they did beat Wolves, which was a strong win for them. But they've also lost at Manchester United. So 2 defeats in 4 for Spurs. Up and down performances. So it's going to be, for me, like one where Spurs have to turn it around again. But I think Brighton are going to perform and make it very difficult for Spurs. So game week 19, I can see Maupay getting one on the break. I think Brighton are going to go defensively minded, strong as I said in defence. It's going to be tough for Spurs. Ali and Kane are going to be where to look, probably there. But I know that Captain Russ will talk about them later. But with Son out after his red card, I think that's going to help Brighton. I think there'll be less speed in the Tottenham team. That will play into Brighton's hands. And I can see Brighton beating Spurs in game week 19. Maybe not beating, but not getting beaten. And there's goals there for Brighton. Then in game week 20, Brighton play Bournemouth. Now, this is, for me, is a game that Brighton will have to win. Both teams will be, looking at this as a 6-pointer. They're currently 13th and 14th in the league. Very, very close in terms of the stats. Brighton have scored 21, Bournemouth 19. But Bournemouth have let in 25 and Brighton have let in 26. So respectively a -5 goal difference for Brighton, -6 for Bournemouth. I think with Brighton being the team playing at home, they will enjoy this and relish, Bournemouth coming to their home ground. I think that, and I can see Brighton winning this. I see Maupay has stepped up to the plate. He's been looking very good. Trossard, we've heard a lot about him. He's a skillful player as well. The one thing that I'd say with Bournemouth is they don't really have strength in depth in their squad. This will be their second game in 2 to 3 days. I think they will struggle against Brighton, and I can really see Brighton taking this one. I'm going to go 3-0 to Brighton there against Bournemouth. That's where I see the points, and that's the reason I have selected Brighton to be my second team to look at, because I can see him defensively setting up well against Tottenham, so it could be a cleanie there. Bournemouth, I feel, will struggle to score, so potentially another cleanie there. So for Brighton, for me, these next 2 game weeks look strong. They're players to look at. Definitely Maupay. He's been really good over the last few game weeks. 3 goals in 4 games. Very strong return from him. Gross has come into his own as well. Pascal Gross, 4 assists actually this season. I feel there'll be assists for him in these coming games. And Trossard, who's only just come back in, 4 assists for him and 2 goals in half the amount of games as Gross. So definitely one to look at. And I know Leandro Trossard is a favourite of Ricky Pellegrini's. Only in 0.3% of teams. Could definitely be one worth looking at. So they're my games for this week.
Captain Russ, over to you.
I will be covering Tottenham and Brighton. Let's just go into very, very briefly the fact that it was an absolutely dreadful performance from Spurs-Chelsea the other weekend. And Spurs will be looking for some big wins in the upcoming games. If you're like me and recently bought Son in the last week, you'll be without a doubt wanting to get rid of him before the next game week. The red card means for that ridiculous, I don't know what he was thinking. What was he doing? I have no idea. It was like a 5-year-old having a tantrum in a playground. Ridiculous. Anyway, he kicked out. He's now suspended until I think the 11th of January. So you'll be wanting to get rid of him. Obviously, the obvious choice would be Dele Alli. It's cheaper. You end up with a bit of money in the bank. With this game coming up, with the Spurs Brighton game, both will be looking for a result after defeats over the weekend. Spurs have looked a little bit more confident since Mourinho took charge. They've got to get really, they've got to sort themselves out. Basically, you know, they've had some losses last few weeks. You know, United, you know, that was a big one against the big guns, and then their performance at Chelsea. Well, you know, we don't need to really dwell or talk about that. With Spurs having some easier fixtures, you know, they've got Brighton, Norwich, Southampton. Interestingly enough, last time Spurs faced Brighton, they lost, I believe, 3-0. Got stuffed back in October. I think Morpea was one of the scorers. You know, he could be someone you might want to consider putting in your team. He's got, like, you know, I think he's like racked up about 72 points. Ryan, the next big scorer, 70, the keeper, and Dunk with 62. They were kind of the only ones that you'd probably want in your team. I can't see anyone else really making it worthwhile for you to have anyone else. But yeah, let's move on. I mean, like, there's obviously you know, Spurs should win this game. There shouldn't be an issue. I mean, I'm hoping for 2-0. I think 2-0 is would be a pretty convincing result for Spurs. I think hopefully Ali will get on the score sheet, and possibly Kane, even though, you know, to be quite honest, he's not really come up trumps recently. That's another story. The week after, Spurs have gotten Norwich away, and you know, Norwich are looking pretty tasty at the moment. They've got Cantwell, you know, putting in a couple of goals, and, you know, you got the danger man Pookie, or whatever you want to call him. Very problematic for Spurs, with Spurs' leaky defence at the moment. So Spurs will have to up the game. They will, you know, it's not going to be a walk in the park by no means whatsoever. However, saying that, I have complete faith that Spurs will win. I think, you know, again, I'm sure a lot of the Spurs fans also will be writing a little Christmas list to Santa, asking for a couple of wishes, like maybe a bit of Dele Alli magic, and hoping that Harry Beavis Balloonhead Kane's gonna actually up his game, tie up his shoelaces, and get a couple of shots on target. I mean, looking at the statistics with Kane at the moment, it's quite shocking. Like, against Chelsea, I think 2 shots, 1 shot on target, 69% pass rate. It's not really looking too good for Kane. So I'm hoping with a little Christmas magic, he's gonna, you know, get back to the old Kane we all love, and let's see what happens. So that's it from me, really.
And your captain picks?
The captaincies for this week, well, you know, Liverpool back. They've they've got they're looking pretty solid. They're looking like they're gonna be, you know, indestructible at the moment. So I think, you know, Salah or Mane for captain. I'd probably, at the moment, with Salah's performance recently, I think my money's on Salah. I definitely would have Salah as my captain. Good old Danny Wings, you know, some people, Jimmy Ferguson, thought, like, you know, Danny Ings as a captain, you know, this wouldn't be such a great idea. He's only, you know, got a record of getting a goal here and a goal there, but you know, last week 2 goals. I mean, you know, my money's on him as well. You know, he's like consistent. He's, you know, you can't not rely on him at the moment, even though he's playing for Southampton. You know, he's getting those points in. So yeah, I would say Danny Ings, like, my second captain choice. My third captain choice, I don't know, it was a difficult one. De Bruyne, I suppose. I'd go back to De Bruyne, even though he didn't really do much last